Why is it called free trade when governments keep getting in the way? From tariffs and quotas to cultural regulations and political power plays, this video breaks down why international trade is anything but free. Welcome to Essential Biz Marketing. We begin with the first key question that drives this chapter. This section focuses on explaining why governments sometimes intervene in trade. You'll learn how political, economic, and cultural motives shape trade policies. Understanding these motivations helps decode real-world trade barriers. Next, we look at how governments actively promote trade. In addition to intervention motives, you'll explore instruments governments use to promote trade. These include subsidies, export financing, and other strategic tools to support domestic industries in global markets. Now we balance promotion with restriction in global trade policies. You'll learn how countries restrict trade using tariffs, quotas, embargoes, and other measures. These tools are critical for understanding how nations protect their economies and political interests. Finally, we take a step back to view the big picture. This final objective introduces the global trading system, including GATT and the World Trade Organization. You'll understand how global institutions seek to reduce barriers and manage disputes in international trade. Let's start with a case that shows how trade and culture collide. Time Warner is a global media giant with businesses in television, publishing, and film. Its international operations span nearly every country, making it a powerful player in global entertainment. One of Time Warner's biggest global hits came from New Line Cinema. The Lord of the Rings trilogy earned nearly $3 billion worldwide and won 17 Academy Awards. The final installment alone generated over $1 billion in global box office revenue. Warner Brothers added more iconic titles to Time Warner's global success. The Harry Potter series became a global phenomenon based on J.K. Rowling's novels. Other successes like The Dark Knight and Wonder Woman helped Warner Brothers reach audiences worldwide. But this global reach also raised concerns in many countries. Governments feared that Hollywood dominance might overshadow local creative industries. There were also cultural concerns about replacing traditional values with imported entertainment. This case leads us into the core debate of this chapter. Despite free trade theories and WTO efforts, many nations still maintain barriers for political, cultural, or economic reasons. The Time Warner example shows how media trade reflects deeper national interests beyond just economics. Now, let's examine why governments don't always leave trade alone. Governments often intervene in trade for political, economic, or cultural reasons. These motives reflect a desire to protect national interests and influence global outcomes. Trade intervention can go in two very different directions. Some policies aim to promote trade by supporting domestic industries. Others restrict trade through tools like tariffs and quotas to limit foreign competition. This sets the stage for the core questions of the chapter. Why do governments intervene in trade, and what tools do they use? We also explore how the World Trade Organization regulates these practices globally. Let's begin with the three major reasons behind trade intervention. Governments intervene in trade for political, economic, and cultural reasons. Each reflects different national priorities that shape global trade policy. Political motives often dominate trade decisions. Governments may restrict trade to protect jobs or defend national security, especially in defense and energy sectors. They may also retaliate against unfair trade practices or exert leverage over dependent nations. Economic motives focus on supporting domestic growth. Trade barriers can protect infant industries until they become competitive. Governments may also pursue strategic trade policies to help firms gain global-scale advantages. Cultural values play a strong role in shaping trade rules. Some countries limit foreign media to protect national identity and heritage. For example, France enforces strict quotas for French-language content on radio and TV. First, let's look at how governments use subsidies to support trade. Subsidies provide financial help to domestic producers through cash payments, tax breaks, or low-interest loans. These measures improve competitiveness both at home and abroad. Another tool is export financing for global expansion. Governments may offer below-market loans or guarantees that reduce the risks of exporting. This support encourages more companies to enter foreign markets. Lowering costs is another way to promote trade. Foreign trade zones reduce tariffs and customs delays for goods passing through special regions. This makes it easier and cheaper for firms to do international business. Several countries have used FTZs strategically. China and Mexico established many FTZs to attract investment and generate jobs. These zones play a key role in building export-driven economies. Governments also help firms navigate global trade rules. Special agencies offer research, training, and promotional support to exporters. They work as a bridge between local firms and global markets. One good example of this approach is found in Japan. JETRO supports small and medium-sized firms entering the Japanese market. It provides consulting and builds partnerships with local distributors. Let's shift to how governments restrict trade, starting with tariffs. A tariff is a tax imposed on goods that are imported or exported. It can be ad valorem, specific, or compound, each affecting pricing differently. Tariffs are designed to change market behavior. By raising the price of foreign goods, tariffs make local alternatives more attractive. This helps protect domestic producers from cheaper imports. Let's begin with a case of real-world pricing before any trade barriers apply. In China, the BYD Han electric vehicle sells for 219,800 Chinese yuan. This price serves as the base case for understanding how tariffs change international market dynamics. Next, we convert this price into US dollars for export. At an exchange rate of 7.24 Chinese yuan per dollar, the BYD Han costs about $30,378 in the US without any tariff. This makes it significantly cheaper than many American electric vehicles. Now let's compare it directly with a major US competitor. The Tesla Model 3 sells for around $39,000 in the US, nearly $9,000 more than the BYD Han. Without tariffs, the Chinese EV holds a clear price advantage in the American market. But what happens when a 100% import tariff is applied? The BYD Han's price doubles to $60,756 after the tariff, removing its price edge. In contrast, the Tesla remains at $39,000, now the cheaper option for consumers. This dramatic price shift shows how tariffs alter market competition. With no tariff, BYD wins on price. With tariffs, Tesla becomes more attractive. Tariffs can flip competitive dynamics overnight, changing buyer decisions entirely. Let's now challenge a common assumption about tariffs. Tariffs don't always raise the price paid by consumers. In many cases, exporters themselves absorb the extra costs to stay in the market. One way this happens is through delivered duty paid, or DDP agreements. Under DDP terms, the supplier covers all costs: tariffs, shipping, and customs clearance. This guarantees that buyers face no additional charges at the border. Sometimes the buyer doesn't even need a formal DDP contract to shift the burden. Powerful retailers often set fixed prices and expect suppliers to absorb rising costs. This pressure forces exporters to lower their margins or lose access to key markets. And the pressure doesn't stop with pricing alone. Retailers may threaten to switch suppliers if prices rise, further weakening exporters. Firms with low bargaining power often bear the full cost of tariffs just to keep contracts. Let's first examine BYD's price point in its home market and what happens when tariffs are applied. In China, the BYD Han is priced at 219,800 Chinese yuan. However, when a 100% import tariff is imposed, its U.S. price rises to $60,756, making it more expensive than the Tesla Model 3 at $39,000 and eroding its price advantage. Now let's look at who actually bears the burden of this high tariff. To stay competitive in the U.S. market, the exporter must absorb the full 100% tariff, an additional 219,800 Chinese yuan in duties. This brings the total export expense to 439,600 Chinese yuan, or about $60,756 at an exchange rate of 7.24 per US dollar. But despite this cost, the strategy isn't to raise the retail price. Instead, the BYD Han is still sold at $30,378 in the US, undercutting the Tesla Model 3 at $39,000. This means the exporter absorbs the full tariff cost to maintain its price competitiveness, shielding American consumers from higher prices. Let's turn to another common trade restriction: quotas. Quotas set a limit on the quantity of goods that can be imported or exported. They are used to protect domestic producers or to manage the supply of essential goods, as seen in OPEC's oil export limits. Sometimes, export limits aren't imposed, but requested. Voluntary export restraints occur when a country agrees to limit its exports at the request of another nation. In the 1980s, Japanese carmakers accepted U.S. demands to restrict exports in order to avoid harsher trade barriers. The most extreme form of trade restriction is the embargo. An embargo is a complete ban on trade with a specific country, often for political reasons. The long-standing U.S. embargo on Cuba is a well-known example of this policy in action. Now let's examine how governments use regulations to promote local industry. Local content requirements mandate that a certain percentage of a product be produced domestically. These rules aim to stimulate local manufacturing and reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. Here's how things worked before such rules were introduced. Automakers could freely import low-cost batteries from abroad, like a $10,000 CATL battery from China. This allowed electric vehicles to be assembled in the U.S. and sold for about $45,000. But everything changes once local content rules take effect. Under the new policy, automakers must source batteries domestically, making imports impossible. They are now required to purchase higher-cost U.S.-made batteries, like those from SK On. Let's compare the outcomes of these two scenarios. Using local batteries raises the total EV cost to $50,000, up from $45,000. While consumers pay more, the policy supports local jobs and strengthens the domestic supply chain. Not all trade barriers involve taxes or quotas. Some are purely bureaucratic. Governments can slow imports by requiring excessive inspections or licensing. These delays create uncertainty and raise costs for foreign businesses trying to enter the market. Another subtle but powerful barrier comes from currency restrictions. Currency controls limit a company's ability to exchange local money into foreign currency for imports. This makes it difficult to pay overseas suppliers, reducing the flow of foreign goods into the country. Let's look at how global trade rules began to take shape. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, was created in 1947 to reduce trade barriers. Over time, it helped lower average tariffs from 40% to just 5%, boosting international trade. But as trade became more complex, GATT was no longer enough. In 1995, the World Trade Organization was established to replace GATT. It became the primary international body for managing global trade relations. The World Trade Organization carries out its mission through three core functions. It works to promote the free flow of trade, negotiate market access agreements, and settle disputes among member nations. These roles make the WTO central to maintaining fairness and openness in the global trading system. Let's see how WTO membership affects tariff treatment between countries. A non-member like Japan may face higher tariffs, such as 10% from Germany and 7% from the US. Without WTO membership, countries lose access to standardized lower tariffs. Now compare that to trade between WTO members. When all three countries are WTO members, they apply equal tariffs, around 3.5%, to each other. This reflects the WTO's core principle of normal trade relations: equal treatment for all members. Beyond lowering tariffs, the WTO also addresses unfair trade practices. When companies sell goods below cost in foreign markets, it's called dumping. Governments can respond by imposing anti-dumping duties to protect local industries. Let's begin with the standard pricing scenario. In China, steel is produced and priced at $700 per ton. When exported to the U.S. at the same price, no distortion or unfair advantage exists. Now let's see what happens when dumping occurs. The Chinese exporter lowers the U.S. price to $500 per ton, $200 below the domestic price. This price undercutting harms local U.S. producers and qualifies as dumping under WTO rules. To counteract this dumping, the U.S. takes action. A 40% anti-dumping duty is imposed, raising the $500 import price back up to $700. This measure eliminates the unfair advantage and restores fair market conditions. Let's review what this policy accomplishes. Anti-dumping duties protect domestic industries from artificially low-priced imports. They enforce fair trade by discouraging below-cost exports designed to capture market share. Let's see how government subsidies distort international pricing. The Chinese government provides BYD with an $11,048 subsidy, reducing its vehicle cost from $41,436 to $30,370. This unfair support allows BYD to export at a price far below production cost, triggering trade concerns abroad. To correct the subsidy's effect, the U.S. takes action. The U.S. government responds by imposing a 100% countervailing duty on BYD exports. This penalty is designed to cancel out the price advantage created by the $11,048 Chinese subsidy. Let's see the outcome of the U.S. response. After the 100% countervailing duty is applied, the BYD Han's price in the U.S. rises to $60,756. This wipes out the cost advantage from Chinese subsidies and weakens BYD's position in the American market. Now let's examine why some global trade talks have stalled. Launched in 2001, the Doha Round aimed to reduce trade barriers and support developing nations. But progress has been slow due to deep disagreements, especially over farm subsidies and tariff cuts between rich and poor countries. Let's wrap up what we've learned about trade politics. Governments intervene in trade for political, economic, and cultural reasons. They may impose tariffs, quotas, and embargoes, or provide subsidies and export support. Here's the big picture from this chapter. Trade policies shape global competition. Businesses must navigate these rules carefully to stay competitive and compliant in international markets. Let's summarize the key reasons why governments intervene in international trade. Governments may intervene in trade to achieve political goals, like protecting jobs or gaining influence over other nations. They also act for economic reasons, such as helping infant industries or promoting strategic trade. Culturally, they may seek to preserve national identity from unwanted foreign influences. Let's review how governments actively promote trade. Governments support exporters with subsidies, export financing, and favorable regulations in foreign trade zones. They also deploy special agencies to organize trade fairs, negotiate access abroad, and help businesses develop international strategies. Here's a summary of the main tools governments use to restrict trade. Import tariffs increase the cost of foreign goods. Quotas limit the quantity that can be imported or exported. Other tools include embargoes, local content requirements, administrative delays, and currency controls. Each tool serves to reduce foreign competition or restrict market access. To summarize, this is how the global trading system operates. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, reduced trade barriers and established principles of fair trade. Its successor, the WTO, enforces rules, settles disputes, and helps open markets. The WTO aims to make trade predictable and transparent. Thank you for watching Chapter 6 on Trade and Politics. We'll see you in the next chapter.